Welcome to the Via Stoica podcast. I'm Benny, and join me as we explore a Stoic way of life, one step at a time. What does it really mean to be a philosopher? And I think that we are closer to that than we think. We often already think about life and we ask ourselves the big questions and how to live it better. We look at how do my actions fit? How do I want to live? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And a lot of these times we don't have any clear answers for these questions. Or maybe they even confuse us a bit more. And we don't want drama in life. We want to have this happy state of being where nothing is wrong and where we always experience pleasure and joy. Sometimes philosophy is taught about us overthinking, about going too far, about not living, about staying in the books, and not looking at life, and about seeing philosophy everywhere else, not within our lives, just looking at it from the ivory tower, down on us, full on the books and everything. But it's closer to life, and we're going to dive right into that in this episode. We have learned, and myself included, to identify philosophy as purely academic, as an expertise that need to be learned, where we need to achieve, diplomas, where we need to have a doctorate. It's full in the academic texts. When we see the debates on TV or on YouTube videos between highly intellectual people using words we often don't understand, at least I don't, and then I have to go and check what it meant. And some of the texts and books that I read are highly complicated. For example, I read the Cambridge Guide to the Stoics, and some of these essays, I couldn't get through them. While other books, they explain things to me in a far more natural and understandable way. It adds to the pressures of life, because if we don't understand these texts, if we don't understand what the big philosophers say, does that mean I'm less? Does that mean that I don't understand life? And it adds to the self-disqualification, myself included. I battle with that every day, that imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Who am I to talk about this philosophy? I don't have a degree, I didn't study philosophy, but I have understood the value of it, and it helps me in my day-to-day life. And that's really what I wanted to show today, and what I wanted to talk about is how it can help you the way it helps me every day. And I'm still learning, I'm still practicing, but one step at a time, one day at a time. And this Stoic way of life has really helped me a lot. And that's what I wanted to dive into, and why you are also a philosopher. I'm a philosopher, we're all philosophers, and we can see how life can be better if we look at it through that lens. When we look at the origins of philosophy, we see one name pop up, and that's Socrates, right? And he was driven by curiosity, by wanting to know more. And he realized, as he said as well, and he went to the oracle in Delphi, which said, like, you are the wisest man. And later on, after his investigations, he realized why that probably was, because he said, like, I know that I don't know anything. And he wanted to fill that gap of knowledge. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to be curious, ask the questions. Even if people made statements, investigate, interrogate them, even to the point where they ended up being confused, because they realized that their statements weren't really true. And that's where philosophy really lends its power. It's this love of wisdom, which it literally translates to Sophia, the love of wisdom. But what kind of wisdom are we looking for here? Are we looking for the academic wisdom, knowing all the quotes by heart, learning all the texts, being able to recite things that have been written 2,000 years ago? Or we want to find a wisdom that helps us move and navigate life, the practical wisdom that tells us what to do when, at least gives us the best guide to make the best decisions. And this is the practical wisdom that we're really after. And I do believe that theoretical part, reading the books, learning, the texts or the underlying beliefs of this philosophy are important, but it's only really matters when the rubber hits the road, when we meet life head on. And philosophy was all focused on what is truth. And we'll look at that a little bit later on in the episode as well. We want to know what is actually happening. We want to have our impressions, our opinions stay as close to reality as possible. And it's not always possible, because we see things on the news, we read things, we get information from other people, and that might not be based on the truth. And sometimes it's impossible to understand the truth, but we have to make our best judgment calls then. then we have to trust on ourselves and on intuition and the experience that we've had and all those things to make that best call. And one of the main aspects of philosophy, and something that I believe we need a little bit more in life, is having an open mind. Being open for other views, other opinions, and being wrong, being able to be wrong, being able to make mistakes. But if we stay stuck in ignorance, if we stay stuck in a closed mind that only believes the things that we believe, never able to change, then we're going to fall in the trap that Socrates and all the ancient philosophers warn us about. We're going to do things that seem right to us, but when we look at it in the bigger picture, they are not, because they're not based on what is true. They're not based on an objective view, and they're not used by reason and logic. And that's really what philosophy is about. So if you're already doing that, if you're already open mind, curious, great, you're on the right track. And for me, and I think for everybody else, we can always be more curious. We can always be more open-minded, ask questions, and before we judge, we pause and we look at what's really happening. And interestingly enough, when you look at the old philosophers, the ancient ones, the old Greeks and the Romans, many of them didn't even write anything. Socrates, we have the Socratic dialogues from Plato. But is that actually Socrates, or is it just how Plato looks at it? Epictetus never wrote anything. So many of those texts have been gone, if they've written anything at all. For them, philosophy was a way of life. It wasn't there to be debated endlessly, to be only on the paper. It was how we meet it in life. And what does that mean? It meant about how to live well. That was the main question they're asking. How to live well. And most of them came at the point of eudaimonia, having a good character and soul. That was the main thing. The Stoics and many of the other philosophies coming from Socrates, they said that the main thing that we have to look after for is our character and our soul. And if we do that, and if we align that with our nature, and if we align that with virtue, we're going to be fine. We're going to live a good life. Whatever happens, the obstacles, we're not going to be as disturbed by it as we were before. And this wasn't necessarily about being smart or sounding smart. The second head of the Stoic school, Cleanthes, he was a gardener. He lived, he worked, he went to a well and during the day to make his money. And this type of philosophy wasn't about sounding smart or being highly intellectual. The second school of the Stoa was Cleanthes. And he was being said that he used to go to make his living to get water from a well and to work as a gardener or something like that. He didn't write much. It was Chrysippus, later had the one who followed Cleanthes, who wrote the most. He wrote about 700 texts, which most of them are lost. We only have some fragments. But we still have the grounding principles of the philosophy, and that wasn't to sound smart. That was just about how life was. Ideas of being able to be applied to life. It was more meant as an orientation. There was theory, but all of that is great. But if you don't apply it, then why use it anyway? And Epictetus has a great quote there. He says, philosophers exhort us not to be contented with mere learning, but to practice, and also then training. He has many of these similar concepts come back. He even says that if you drag us out of the classroom, most of us are lost desperately. Why? Because we never put it into training. We never put it into practice. We keep reading these self-help books, one after the other, and then proudly showing off how many we've read. But if we actually have to do it, that's a different story. And then you only need to read a few. You only need to read one or two. And once you find the one that is similar to your voice, that really connects with you, then go for it. Again, be open-minded, critical. Talk to other people, see what resonates with them, see if you can adjust it here or there. But create that philosophy of life for yourself, and that will help you guide you through your life so much better. This is all about the intention that we put into it, and the attention that we spend to our own lives and the world around us. We need to learn from nature. Nature is our best teacher. When we put it into practice, it's about repetition. The Stoics have this idea of being a sage, which is pretty much impossible. And they are the first to acknowledge that. But it's all about being better, learning from our mistakes and growing. And if we do that, then we can also readjust our views of life, our philosophy of life. We can use that experience to grow our wisdom and then to make sure that the next time around we are going to be better at. It's all about the intention that we put in and the attention that we pay to the world around us. It's not about becoming the expert, the master. It's all about us becoming better, one day at a time. And for a lot of people, when they hear the word philosophy, at least that's from my experience, when I speak to people and I say, wow, philosophy, Stoic coach, using philosophy as a guide to for the life coaching and as a guide through life. Many people say, wow, that's incredible. But I'm just like anyone here. I'm just studying this for myself, and I do so almost every day. Why? Because it helps me. And what I've learned as I've studied this is that philosophy shows up in ordinary moments, right? In the most trivial of things, not the ones that are philosophical. And I try at least to have more philosophical conversations to really dive into what is the meaning of life and all of that stuff. But when you look at the real practical use, it's in going to the supermarket, driving on the streets, on the road, meeting those friction points and knowing how to deal with them better. When big moments and big decisions come up, how do I pause? How do I stay calm? How do I learn to see it objectively, using reason and logic and not being guided by my emotions to act? Right? We use our emotions for information, but we don't want to act out of them, especially when that's emotions like anger or sadness. Those are the times when philosophy really becomes important. And we can practice beforehand, and then when we meet those moments, we can then apply it the best we can. And if we don't use it, a lot of the times we see that our instant reaction just takes over, and we only notice afterwards what we've done and how we could have done better. Our judgments make sure that we just see the world the way we want to see it, and the pause comes too late. But we have to learn to see that also as making progress. That reflection, that is where we apply philosophy. That is where we start to think. That's where we start to reevaluate our actions. And in a previous episode where I talked about what's wrong with modern Stoicism, why we needed self-compassion, this is exactly that moment that we're talking about. Right? When we do make those mistakes, when we are acting out of our emotions, that's really where we need to then pause, reflect, and learn to do it better. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was this quote from Epictetus. He says, "The first and greatest task of a philosopher is to put impressions to the test and distinguish between them." Right? Learning how to deal with the impressions that we get from our senses, our sight, our smells, our hearing, all of those impressions, we need to learn to pause, see what they really are, and then learn to distinguish between them. That's really the task of a philosopher. And that's something that we're all doing at every single moment. The only problem is that we sometimes let us be swayed away by that first impression. I see something, I hear a noise and it sounds scary, or maybe I had a previous experience that it was scary, or something that is making me angry. The real philosopher then learns how to pause and sees it for what it really is. And we've talked about this in many other episodes, but this is to highlight that you're practicing philosophy more often than you think. Now we just need to learn how to transform it in something that can help us in our daily lives. And for us, it's difficult to look in the mirror, right? To constantly see how well we are doing. But one great practice, and something that I've been doing for a while now, is to see if we can recognize philosophy in those around us. The Stoics talk about the wise person, right? Who is the wise person? But my question to you is, look around you, and who is the wise person in your view, in your life? Who do you go to for advice if you want to make a decision about something, or if you're struggling with parts of life, if you need some guidance, some directions? Who are the people around you that you knock on the door and say, hey, I need to ask you some questions. I need to think this through with you. Because those are all the philosophers that we need. Those are the people that will help us in difficult times. That can be a parent. It can be a friend or a teacher. And what makes them wise? Think about that. What makes them the source of knowledge that you respect and want to adhere to? Is it because they have a calm presence? They can listen carefully? Or is it how they lived? Is it by the example that they've set? Think about that, and then think about how you can also be an example to others. How you can then help others, guide them through their difficult times. And if you do that, then you can reflect on yourself as a philosopher and as a wise person, and maybe even use that to become wiser. Epictetus follows this up with another great quote, and people who've been listening to me, they know that I'm a big fan of Epictetus and his wisdom. He is one of the wise men that I go to, the texts, because obviously he's no longer with us. But he said, "Will you not perceive and distinguish what are the things that make men philosophers?" What makes us philosophers, as we've seen before, is what makes us philosophers is how we think, not how we look or the things that we have, all those externals. No, how do we behave in life? We need to recognize that. We need to learn to recognize those skills and those qualities, and we need to see it before we can name it. A lot of the times, instinctively, we are drawn to those people. But even there, we need to sometimes be skeptical and reevaluate if they actually mean well or how our relationship is. But a true philosopher will always be there, and we can always rely on their support. Part of awakening or reconnecting with the philosopher inside is also knowing what the right action is and how our moral compass then guides us. A lot of the times we miss the voice of our intuition. We don't listen well to what our nature tells us. And one of the best teachers around us is nature itself, but also our inner guide. So when we think about becoming a philosopher, it's not just about our responses or our reactions in life. It's also who we listen to and who we let us guide. It's that reflection. But it's also becoming still, taking a pause in life and listening to yourself. What is your nature? Where do you want to guide? What does the good life mean to you? Are you being dragged along by chasing these externals, or by making sure that you are not missing out on this, or comparing yourself to many others, which I do myself as well, and it's a continuous struggle. But because of philosophy, because I'm asking myself these questions, and I'm trying to listen closer to my inner voice, what is important to me, setting my values and my priorities, identifying them more, that will help me to stay on course. That will help me to put less value on those externals and more on my own actions, more on myself, on who I am. And when we pay attention to that, and this is often tested under pressure, and many times we fail there. But if we try to practice more, the next time when those moments come, we can deal with it a lot better. And that's the progress that we're making. And that's what makes you a philosopher. To reflect, to learn, and to experience life. So what does it really mean to being a philosopher? It simply means living, but not just living and following, living with awareness. We're living with presence, living with in the moment, asking questions, being curious, and being honest about how you want to live life. Not just taking it for granted. We only have one life. We've been given this precious moment here, and it's our responsibility and our duty to make the best of it. And the best doesn't mean having all the most shiny objects. It means how we curate and how we take care of our character and our soul. That's the most important role that we've been given. And there are no final answers. There is no pure wrong or right of what to do here and there. Every moment is different. We just have to try our best. Be open-minded, be curious, read, learn theoretical philosophy for as much as you want. But the most important part is when we apply it to life. And again, what does it really mean? So as we start to wrap this episode up, I want to all invite you to think about what it means to be a philosopher. How well do you fit that description already? How curious are you on life? And how many questions do you ask about what is the right way to live for you and what does that actually mean? If you have some questions about that, or if you have different views, leave a comment. We always appreciate those, and they will help us see what content you would really want to see and listen to. And also like and subscribe. But for now, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you in the next one.